Hey, Momo. Hey, Momo, can you please move? I'm trying to record a video. Hey, hey dude, can I Momo, thank you. Okay. All right. Well, let's get started. Alright, hello Drawing 2 students. This is Mr. Ham. This is a demonstration on how to get started with your stipple project. First, here's a couple of specs. We're all going to be using the same source, so here is your source. You can find this on Canvas, just download it and print it out. If you've got a fancy printer that lets you choose like the percentage of how large you want your picture to be, choose somewhere around a 50%. That will print it out around this size, which is a little bit smaller than your size you'll be working with, so that would be good. Your size is going to be 6 by 8 inches, so on your 14 by 17 paper, that gives you 4 inches on the left and right sides, and 4.5 inches on the top and bottom. So if you give yourself that amount of distance for the border, you'll end up with 6 by 8 inches on the inside, which is what we're going to be working with for the project. So after you are transferred, you are ready to start rendering in Stipple. For your project, we'll all be using the same pen. These are Micron pens. You can get them at any local art store. Walmart even sells them. They go from sizes 0.5 all the way up to size 8. So you want to get maybe a little bit of a variety of pens, since we have these very subtle light areas, but we also have these very dark areas, you know. So the smaller the tip, or the smaller the number, the smaller the tip. So you don't want to use like a 0.5 in something that is, you know, this dark, because that will take forever. You want to use like a higher number, like a 5 or an 8 for that. And we're going to be using only these sharp tip pens. We're not going to be using the brush tips. So here's a 3, so you can see how sharp the point is in the tip of that pen. So you might want to get maybe 3 or 4 pens. I'd suggest one very small pen, maybe a 0.5 or a 1, and then also a medium, like a 3 or a 5, and then also maybe an 8 for those darker areas. So before you guys start, I recommend doing a value scale so that you can practice both dark values, light values, and also soft transitions with soft edges. In your darker areas, you want to use a higher number pen. In this area, I'm using a 5. And you can see that I'm laying the dots down in kind of like lines, so I'm keeping them very organized. So organization of your points is just as important in Stipple as it is in your crosshatch. So most often you'll end up working in kind of like lines of dots. And you can take that idea and bring it onto your portrait when you're working. Just the same way in crosshatch as we turned the lines around forms, you can do the same thing when you're working on your Stipple so that you can keep it organized in your mind, and sometimes even be able to enhance the form a little bit. So you can see that Stipple takes quite a while to develop a dark value, even when you're using a larger size pen like this. But still make sure that you're going slow enough that you're creating clean dots. Sometimes if you go too fast, you can add like a little tail to the end of your dot, which makes your dot look like a tadpole. So go for dots, not tadpoles, in your Stipple. Here we are going 4 times the speed, because normal speed would have been torture. Um, as you can see, I just switched to a smaller size pen. So use an appropriately sized pen for the area of value you're trying to achieve. If you use a size 8 or a 5 in a very light, subtle area, you're going to create a really chunky dot, which may not be what you're wanting. And then also using like a 1 or a 0.5 size pen for a dark area is actually kind of pointless because it ends up looking almost the same if you were to just use a bigger pen, and it takes much longer. So it's not more impressive to use a smaller pen for the entire picture. So try to treat this exercise like the value squares from drawing 1. It's important to create a smooth value, a consistent value, and to also build your value from light to dark. In graphite, when you have like a little dark patch, you can just take your kneaded eraser or something and tap it away to make it lighter. But in Stipple, because we're working with a pen, you won't be able to do that. So it's that much more important to work slowly and to build from light to dark. Sometimes if you have a dark patch, sometimes the only solution is to make everything else around it darker so that you can still have that consistent value. But that's really annoying to do, so work slowly and try not to make that problem for yourself. As you start working into the lighter areas, it's really important to be strategical about the placement of your dots. You want those areas to look really clean and organized. For your highlight, since you want it to be the white of the paper, I would suggest outlining it in a pencil before you work there so that you can avoid putting any dots in that area. And then also, in your direct light, there's a certain point where the dots stop contributing to the value and just start looking like lonely dots on your page. So try to avoid that in your lighter areas. Alright, so as you're getting started here, I would suggest setting up a range of value for yourself from the light of your paper to the darkest dark. So that's going to give you something to compare all of your other values to. Say if it's in the dark side, you can say how dark is it in comparison to my darkest value, and or how light is it in comparison to my lightest value. And that's going to help you range all of your other values in between. So you can see as I'm working here in the hair, my hand is still moving in the direction of the hair. That's going to help me keep it organized and also to help me to keep a little bit more of that flow and rhythm to the hair. You also saw as I was outlining part of the cheek and part of the collar, I was still using dots. So don't use any actual lines on your picture, only use lines of dots. Because building a value in Stipple takes a few layers, you have to anticipate what the value is going to look like from the very beginning, so that you don't accidentally push the value too far. You also have to anticipate what type of edge it is going to be. For example, up here in the hair, I want mostly soft edges, so I'm leaving the edges soft even on the very first layer. If you work around the entire page using a hard edge, it is likely that you will create some sort of distracting pattern. So build slowly from light to dark using an appropriate edge from the very beginning. Just like in any medium, you don't want to make any marks that would distract the viewer from the message or the emotion of the work. Those hard edges are really distracting, so be sure to squint your eyes when you're looking at your source and have a good variety of edges. Um, Only leave those really sharp, hard edges on the transitions that really stand out to you when you're squinting.